Do you know what it feels like to hear that you are not welcome at your own granddaughter's sweet 16, I was told via a voice message. They left me sitting in my house wearing the dress I had ironed for the occasion, while at the venue the waltz was playing without me. But what they did not know is that on that same day I started writing the ending of this story. And when they came knocking on my door asking for $15,000, I showed them that in this house I am not a guest, I am the owner. I listened to the audio message twice because I did not want to believe it the first time. Mrs. Margaret, with all due respect, the Sweet 16 party is for young people. My daughter-in-law's voice sounded sweet, like when you add sugar to bitter coffee, so it slides down easier. Then came the punchline that burned me from the inside. "Do not worry, we will send you photos." I remained seated in my living room with my back straight out of habit and my hands gripping my shawl as if my life depended on that piece of fabric. Outside, I heard the ice cream truck passing by and a dog barking on the neighbor's porch. Inside, it seemed like everything had fallen into silence, except for my chest, which was beating like a drum. It smelled of fresh coffee. I had left it ready in case my granddaughter came to say hello before the salon, as she promised. And for Daisy and those white flowers I placed this morning on the small altar for the Virgin Mary. They did not come. They did not knock. They did not call. I took a deep breath so my voice would not break when I dialed my son. Mike. He answered quietly as if I were an obstacle that had to be moved with care. "Mom, don't get mad. It is so you don't get tired. You are getting old." "I am old, yes," I told him, "but I am not dead." Silence. Then I knew it was not fatigue nor protocols nor any of that. It was shame. They were ashamed of their mother among their fancy friends with her mother-in-law who sells appearances, and those girls who pose like queens on Instagram. And me. What was I? An old ornament that gets put away when visitors arrive that night. When the fireworks started bursting in the distance, I repeated to myself like a prayer, "I am not going to cry." I poured myself another coffee that already tasted lukewarm and like rejection. I looked at the dress I had sewn with my own hands for my granddaughter months ago, stitch by stitch. The same dress they later changed because the local seamstress does not understand trends. I applauded as if it did not hurt. I paid for the flower arrangement. Because, Grandma, you do understand good taste. I smiled as if my pride was not bleeding. And now we will send you photos. What generosity on their part. On the phone, the stories from the venue were coming out one after another. The grand entrance, the waltz, the huge centerpieces that looked like trees. I turned off the screen when I saw my granddaughter spinning luminous without me. It was not envy. It was absence. I was missing from the corner of the frame. My hug was missing my lavender perfume, my voice whispering in her ear what my grandmother told me the day I turned 15. When you lack strength, stand up straight and breathe like someone who knows who she is. I stood up straight. I breathed. I did not cry. But my eyes burned as if the air was filled with smoke. The next day, I woke up with a heavy body, that weight, that humiliation leaves when it sits on top of you and does not leave. I went to the kitchen, turned on the griddle to warm up some toast, and started making scrambled eggs. Cooking organizes my head. The knife marks the rhythm, the oil sizzles, the garlic smells like home. I was taking the first bite of a piece of dry toast when they knocked on the door. 3 timid knocks like someone who knows they do not deserve to enter. I opened it. There they were. My son looking at the floor and my daughter-in-law with a bouquet of cheap flowers that she did not even remove from the grocery store plastic. "Mrs. Margaret, we came to talk," she said, tightening her smile. "Can we come in for a little bit?" I let them in. I served them coffee. I am one of those who offer coffee even if their heart is broken. That is how I was raised. The house smelled of warm toast and wounded dignity. She was direct like someone ripping off a Band-Aid in one pull. We had an unforeseen expense from the party, and well, you know that everything turned out beautiful. But now we need support. It is $15,000, just $15,000 to cover the venue, the DJ, and a pending issue that came up at the last minute. Only for a while, of course. As soon as we stabilize, we will pay you back." The back of my neck went cold, but my hands remained steady on the cup. I wanted to ask if that pending issue of the last minute was the same one that left me off the dance floor. I did not say it. It did not suit me to say it yet. I saw my son Mike with that face of a boy who asks for forgiveness with his eyes, but who does not know how to defend his mother with his mouth. I remembered when he fell off his bicycle at 8 years old, and I got between the dogs that were chasing him. I did know how to defend him. Today he did not know how to defend me. $15,000. I repeated slowly to hear my own voice. "Yes," she said, "and it would be very quick. You have always been an angel to us." Angel. The word scraped me like sandpaper. Angel to pay obstacle to celebrate. I looked at the cross above the door and remembered something my late husband used to say. People measure you by what you allow. I set the cup on the saucer. The clink sounded dry like a bell before the sermon. "It is fine," I said. "Sit down." They looked at each other relieved, believing the miracle was done. I put my hands on the table. You could see my veins, the thin skin of my 67 years, the needle scars from so many dresses sewn at dawn. My voice came out low, but even like a well-tensioned thread. "Before talking about money, we are going to talk about respect." She jumped a little in the chair. My son swallowed hard. The wall clock struck 11 with that old hammering sound that rumbles through the whole house. I breathed again, straight as I was taught. I was not going to beg for a place in my own family. Here is where I ask you something with my heart in my hand. If these real-life stories move, you subscribe to the channel. I want you to accompany me until the end because what I am going to say next changed the course of this house. I promise you justice, but not from a movie, the kind that hurts and teaches. Last night, I continued, I heard music, I saw fireworks, and I did not hear my name. Today I hear angel and support as if I were an ATM with a skirt and no. I am the owner of my name and my dignity. I paused, let the phrase float, heavy, inevitable. You want $15,000. Maybe I can help you, but first you are going to understand who runs this house and why. My daughter-in-law tilted her head haughty and sweet. And what would we have to do, Mrs. Margaret? I smiled a little barely because the plan was already in motion from the moment I heard we will send you photos. I opened the drawer of the sideboard, took out a folder with papers that smell of old ink and firm decisions, and placed it on the table between the cups. We start here, I said, touching the cover with my index finger, and if they thought my silence was weakness, they have seen nothing because the worst and the best had not happened yet. When they call me Angel to open my wallet, I remember everything I kept silent so that this family could walk. I was not born with soft hands. Mine know the weight of the bucket with water, the smell of bleach in the nails, the stubborn noise of the sewing machine biting the dawn. Since I was young, I made dresses for other girls' sweet 16s with lace that I could not buy for myself. I learned to measure with my eyes, to mend without it showing, to stretch the dollar just like dough so that it would be enough for everyone. That was my school and my bank. With the first money I saved, I paid for Mike's degree. He wanted to be someone. And I used to tell him, "You are already someone's son. The paper will open doors for you, but your character will let you pass." I sold a set of gold earrings that had belonged to my mother, $480 they gave me, and with that, I covered his enrollment. The detachment hurt me more than the figure, but I felt a rare joy, like planting a little seed that one day will give shade. I also paid for used books, photocopies, bus fares. I braided Patience when he failed a class and wanted to give up. I did not allow it. You fall, you get up, nobody stays lying down here. And I picked him up just as I picked him up from the bicycle, before from the fever from his first disappointments. When he fell in love with the one who is now my daughter-in-law, I received her with fresh coffee and pastries. She appeared with expensive perfume and an advertisement smile. I boiled cinnamon sticks so the house would smell like a welcome. I gifted them their first set of sheets white because they were starting, and I put in $2,000 for the simple wedding, which ended up being bigger because her family could not look bad. I did not want Mike to start out owing money. It cost me years to get ahead of the debt of life. I did not want them to inherit it. Then came the house, where today they asked to sit down to ask me for support. The down payment was $8,500. I had $5,000 saved in envelopes stored by colors inside the sideboard. The rest I completed by sewing without Sundays for 7 months. The notary office smelled of cold and ink. I signed as a guarantor with my fingers trembling a little, not from fear, but from dignity. I remember that upon leaving, I pressed my shawl to my chest and thought, may this door never close for my son. I did not imagine that one day they would close it on me figuratively for a party. When my granddaughter was born, I was the one who learned to prepare her formula, the one who sang, "You Are My Sunshine," in a soft voice, the one who walked with her in my arms down the hallway when colic turned the world upside down. I took care of her so her mother could sleep. I once paid for an urgent care visit of $120 without saying anything because the baby had a cough and they were short on cash. That night I made chicken soup with rice and steamed eucalyptus leaves so she could breathe better. The room smelled of grandmother's remedies and hope. I never complained, I never kept score out loud. My accounting was different. That they eat well, that they do not lack the basics, that Mike does not feel like he failed. I stayed silent when they changed my dress for a designer one, when they laughed because I did not know how to pronounce the DJ's name, when they told me, do not upload that to Facebook, Mrs. Margaret. How embarrassing. I bit my tongue so many times that I still feel it with scars. One day, they brought me a catalog of curtains to modernize the house, and instead of saying I cannot paid $650 so their living room would look like Pinterest, she hugged me with a Mrs. Margaret, you are the best, and I responded with a God bless you that came from my chest, because I do believe that abundance returns when it is shared. Abundance, yes, but not lack of memory. Sometimes when I iron, I see my life pass in steam. The girl I was perched on a stool to reach the clothesline, the young widow who learned not to fear the bills, the mother who unstitched and re-sewed the same uniform so it would last another school year, the grandmother who knows in which drawer everything is and in what gesture every lack of respect hides. I am not perfect. I make mistakes. I give too much. I take too long to set limits. I trust where I should not. It hurts me to admit it. Sometimes I think I educated Mike to be successful, but not to be brave. I got him used to me solving things that if something was missing, Mom gets it. Maybe that is why he stayed silent when his wife said that my presence was not necessary at the Sweet 16. That silence was a paper I never signed, and yet it was recorded. I do not seek pity. I seek memory. I seek that if they call me angel, they also look me in the eyes when there is a waltz. That if my money smells of effort, my name smells of respect. And while I sit in this chair, the same one where one day I fell asleep from exhaustion, with the needle in my hand, I understand something that pierces me like lightning. It is not about what I gave. It is about what I allowed them to take away. I breathe straight back. The clock marks its stubborn beat. I am not going to cry now. Tears are too expensive to waste on those who do not appreciate them. I light a candle before the Virgin Mary. The flame trembles and perfumes the kitchen with hot wax. I bring the folder of papers, deeds, receipts, proof of payments, and I put it on the table as if I were spreading out a map. It is my story written in ink and effort. And I swear by my mother and by the woman I was that this time they are not going to buy my silence with plastic flowers. Because if I learned something in all these years, it is that dignity is not pawned, it is defended, it is collected. And when the time comes, it is put on the table. And that time was about to strike louder than the clock, because what my daughter-in-law was going to say in the next visit was going to change the rules of the game. The doorbell rang at noon when the afternoon sun enters through the window and makes the dust shine as if they were fireflies trapped in my living room. I opened the door with the kitchen towel in my hand, still smelling of soap and lemon. There they were. Mike with his shoulders slumped as if his jacket weighed him down, and she impeccable with long, wine-colored nails and a cold perfume that reminded me of a hotel lobby. They wore a smile that did not open doors. It closed guilts. "Can we talk, Mrs. Margaret?" she asked in a sing-song voice like someone reciting a script. "Come in," I said and stepped aside. The floor recently mopped smelled of an orderly house. I served them fresh coffee in mismatched cups. I reserve the matching ones for visitors who look me in the eye. She barely tasted it. Mike, on the other hand, held it with both hands as if he wanted to warm his fingers or his shame. "Mom," he started, avoiding my gaze, "we really didn't want you to feel bad about the party. It's just, it was a lot of young people, you know, and there was alcohol and very loud music. We didn't want you to get tired." "I walk more blocks than that dance floor," I replied without raising my voice. She intervened quickly. "It was a themed party, Mrs. Margaret. They wanted something like international, you know, production lights, DJ screens. The kids like it that way. Imagine it turned out very expensive, but it was worth it." She smiled. Everyone talked about the event. I pressed my lips to the cup so I would not say the first thing that came to my tongue. The coffee was strong, just how I like it, without sugar and without lies. "Besides," continued Mike with the voice of a scolded child, "we thought you might get stressed with so much movement. You already what, Mike?" I looked at him finally. "You are already," the phrase deflated. "You don't like those things anymore." I let out a tiny dry laugh. I do not like humiliations, I thought, but I did not say it. I wanted to hear it all, every excuse arranged like a plastic flower. She crossed her leg, her heel hit the ceramic with a tick, and then came the second layer of varnish. It wasn't personal, honestly. It was a logistics issue. The venue had a capacity, and the family table was left for the parents, godparents, cousins. It was an organization issue. Someone had to sacrifice. Someone. And she looked me up and down, landing the word on my floral skirt, on my hands, marked by years of needlework on my shawl, folded with care. The sacrifice had a face, and it was mine. "But I promise you," said Mike with the voice of a scolded child, "that the waltz was beautiful. You would have cried. We sent you videos. Did you see them?" "I saw enough," I replied. "I saw what was necessary." She leaned forward with a catalog smile. "And now, while we are closing accounts, we are missing $15,000, she said like someone asking for a recipe. "It is just that everything went up, you know, the DJ charged double for experience. The baker canceled and we had to pay another one. The open bar went like water, and the venue asked for a guarantee. We are a little off balance. We just need your support for a little while, Mrs. Margaret. You have always had a heart of gold." The phrase scraped my ear. Heart of gold to pay, invisible heart to celebrate. "And my place at the table," I asked calmly. "In which item did you put it? In capacity or in logistics?" Mike swallowed hard. She blinked, patient. "Oh, Mrs. Margaret, don't take it that way. It wasn't the environment for you. Besides, you already have your age." The word age escaped her with that sweet poison that smells of perfumed contempt. "Too much noise. Your blood pressure." "My blood pressure flattens shirts and raises families. Honey," I answered. "And my age has taught me to recognize when they want me out so that nothing gets in their way, not even their conscience." For the first time, silence. The clock struck 1, and the house seemed to beat with its stroke. Outside, a campaign truck drove by shouting, "A better future." And it seemed like a cruel joke. Some people really love a good lie. Mike tried to rescue the scene. "Mom, I swear this isn't for lack of affection. It is another way of seeing things. Generations. You know." Yes, I said. I know how to see who sits and who serves, who applauds and who pays, who dances and who looks through the window. She rolled her eyes barely. I learned to see those micro gestures in decades of the neighborhood and sewing machines. And she changed tactics. Look, if the money makes you uncomfortable, we leave it as a loan and we sign an IOU for you. Does that seem right? That way we all end up happy. All. What a generous word, when the one who yields is always the same one. I adjusted myself in the chair upright. I left the cup to the side. I wanted them to hear my breathing, even owner of its rhythm. I was not going to shout. Truths do not need volume. They need a backbone. I am not a financier, I began. I am a seamstress, and we seamstresses know where the fabric pulls and where it comes undone. You are telling me that the party came undone and now you want me to reinforce the seam. Fine. But before fixing the dress, we checked the pattern. What? What pattern? Asked Mike. I leaned a little forward. The pattern of respect. The one that does not contemplate seating the grandmother out of the photo and inside the bill. That pattern does not fit me. She pressed her lips together. Another excuse sounded now wrapped in cellophane. You know that we always include you. Always. Just that this time everything was last minute and I was super stressed. If I am being honest, there were comments, Mrs. Margaret. You know, people are mean. That if you were going to want to give your opinion, that it interfered with the event planner. I wanted to avoid you having a bad time. Ah, the truth poked its head out. It was not my blood pressure nor my age. It was her circle. It was shame with my working-class manners, with my God bless yous, with my starched skirt, with my way of applauding loudly. I held her gaze. Okay, I said. Thank you for the honesty. Mike opened and closed his mouth like a fish out of water. She crossed her arms, defensive. So, can you support us? She asked, nailing the can as if it were obvious. I got up without rushing. I went to the sideboard and brought the folder. I put it on the table. The pages smelled of ink and time. Their names jumped out in the deeds as if they wanted to hide. Before talking about $15,000, we are going to review other figures, I said. $480 for college enrollment, $2,000 for the wedding, simple, $5,000 for the down payment and 7 months of Sunday's sewing, $650 for magazine curtains, $120 for an urgent care visit. Shall I continue? She huffed, annoyed. That was years ago. Don't mix things. Respect does not expire, honey, I responded. Nor is it paid with grocery store flowers. The air tensed up. Mike rubbed his forehead. Mom, please. Mike, I cut him off gently. I am not going to scold you. You are not a boy anymore. You are the man who stayed silent when your wife said that my presence was not necessary, and that silence hurt me more than any audio message. He put his hand to his chest, wounded by the truth. She made a gesture with her head, impatient like someone calculating parking minutes. So what do you propose? She said dryly. I smiled a little. I was not going to improvise. Dignity is not improvised. It is planned. I will propose conditions, I announced. Clear written and a single opportunity to do things right. What conditions? Asked Mike with that mixture of fear and relief. I took a breath. On the other side of the window, a hummingbird fluttered among my bougainvilleas, tiny and firm. That is how I wanted my voice. First, I said, you are going to look me in the eyes when you speak to me. Second, you are going to name me as what I am, the grandmother. Third, you are going to repair in public the offense you committed in public. And the money, she interrupted. The money will come after what really matters. I kept silent for a second, measuring the stitch. Tomorrow at 8, I expect you here. We are going to sign what corresponds, and I am going to show you something that will change who runs this house. She frowned. Something like what? I closed the folder carefully. The thump sounded like a zipper closing on a dress that finally fits. Like a recording, I said, and a deed that perhaps you forgot to read. The color drained a little from her face. Mike looked at me confused. Recording. Tomorrow, I repeated. 8 o'clock sharp. I walked them to the door. The sun did not shine the same anymore. The living room smelled of cold coffee and decisions. Before leaving, she went back on the attack. So is there support? There is memory, I responded. An order. Tomorrow you will know the difference. I closed the door. I stayed for a moment with my hand on the doorknob, breathing deeply. The clock struck, and for the first time in days, I felt that it marked time in my favor, because what they were going to hear the next day was going to cost them more than $15,000. And to me, finally, it was going to return my name. That Saturday morning dawned with the smell of a party, although in my house silence reigned. Since early on the noise from the venue preparations sounded in the distance, each burst of sound was a reminder that something was happening without me. The neighborhood was more alive than usual, neighbors sweeping the sidewalk, ladies buying flowers for their altars, children running with balloons. I opened the window and felt that warm air that smells of fresh sweet rolls from the bakery on the corner. That should be a day of celebration for me, too. I put on my best Sunday dress, a navy blue one that I ironed the night before, with the foolish hope that they would call me at the last minute. I combed my hair calmly. I put on the pearl earrings that I reserve for special occasions. The mirror returned the reflection of a 67-year-old woman who has known how to get up from many things, but that day, her gaze was heavy. Hope is stubborn, and even though they had told me I was not invited, my heart repeated to itself, maybe someone will change their mind. Maybe Mike will come for me at the last minute. I prepared fresh coffee and warmed up some sweet rolls on the griddle. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon and brown sugar. The steaming cup was trembling in my hands. Outside, the sound of honking horns started to grow. The music arrived distant but clear. Pop music dance hits, then the slow waltz. My heart skipped a beat. That was the time. I imagined my granddaughter coming down the stairs, her dress shining under the lights, taking her father's arm, and I was not there to see her. I sat in the living room with my shawl on my lap. Every round of applause I heard in the distance was like a soft but constant slap in the face. The phone vibrated, a social media notification. I opened it by reflex. There she was, my granddaughter spinning on the dance floor, smiling like never before. The LED lights painted the hall blue and pink. The guests were recording with their cell phones, hearts clapping, emojis, comments full of, "How beautiful." I wanted to write something too, but I could not. I just saved the photo. Another story. The godparents dancing. The tables full of huge centerpieces. The dishes served on china that surely cost a fortune. I recognized the tablecloth, the same one I helped pay for. My eyes burned. I swallowed hard so I would not cry. I repeated to myself, I am not going to give them the satisfaction of letting my sadness crumble me. The house felt too big for me alone. I walked down the hall. I knocked on the door of the room where my granddaughter slept when she stayed over for the weekend. On the bed was still the teddy bear I bought her on her first day of school. I sat down and hugged it. It smelled like dust, but it still kept that sweet scent that reminded me of her laughter. There I did let the tears flow. I cried softly so the house would not hear me, so not even the walls would judge me. When the music got louder again, I wiped my face and lit a candle. I put the flame in front of the Virgin Mary and murmured, "Protect her, even if I am not there. May she not lack joy, even if she lacks my hug." Night fell, and the sound of fireworks lit up the sky. From my window, I saw the lights reflecting in the puddles on the street. They looked like little colored crowns mocking my loneliness. I poured myself a little brandy, the kind I keep for visitors, and toasted alone. To you, my little girl. To your happiness, and to mine, which will come. Oyam, when silence returned to the neighborhood, the cell phone vibrated again. It was a message from Mike. "Mom, it was a success. We are sending you videos so you can see everything." I watched them. Every second weighed on me like lead. The image that hurt me the most was the family photo. Everyone together except me. I turned off the phone and stared at the candle until the flame went out on its own. In that instant, I felt something new. It was not sadness. It was a silent decision that was beginning to take shape. I could not change what happened that night, but I could decide what was going to happen next. I went to sleep with my dress on a chair, my eyes swollen and my heart burning. And as I closed my eyes, I repeated a promise to myself. This does not stay like this. The next time, they are not going to leave me out of my own story. Because the pain of that night was turning into something else, into the strength that would make me get up the next day to start my plan. Sunday dawned cloudy, as if the sky was also carrying a hangover after so much music. I was sweeping the patio when I heard the soft knock on the gate. 3 knocks. Those were not a neighbor's. They were from someone who does not know if they will be well received. I wiped my hands on my apron and opened it. There they were. Mike, with messy hair and dark circles that betrayed a lack of sleep, and her with dark glasses despite the gray sky with her cell phone in her hand and a smile of compromise. "Hi, Mom," she said in a sing-song voice. "Can you give us a few minutes?" My heart skipped a beat. A part of me hoped to hear, "Sorry about yesterday." But no, there were no real flowers. There were no apologies in their eyes. Just a cheap bouquet from the grocery store with the price still stuck to the plastic. "Come in," I said and guided them to the living room. The house smelled of floor soap and reheated coffee. I put 2 cups in front of them because although the wound was bleeding, my manners do not come undone. They sat on the usual armchair, the one that squeaks when someone moves. She was direct. "Mom, you know the party turned out beautiful. Everyone spoke about how well organized it was. But, well, there were some pending things left. And, well, we know that you have always been there for us, that you have a huge heart. That is why we came." Mike cleared his throat as if to soften the fall. "Mom, the truth is that we need to cover $15,000. It is to close the account for the hall, the DJ, some last-minute things. It was more than we planned." The cup remained suspended in the air. I did not drink. I just looked at them. Nothing was heard but the tick-tock of the wall clock and the hum of the refrigerator. $15,000. I repeated slowly, as if tasting the figure on my tongue. "Yes," she replied, smiling, "but do not worry, it is temporary. As soon as we stabilize, we will pay you back." The irony bit me inside. Yesterday I was too old for young people. Today my name was useful enough for the bank account. My chest burned, but my voice did not. "And why do you think I can help you with that amount?" I asked calmly. She raised her chin. "Because you have always done it. Because you are part of this family." Part. That word stuck in me like a needle. Part to pay, never to sit at the main table. Mike lowered his head. "Mom, understand us. If we do not pay this week, they are going to charge us late fees interest. It is going to become a problem." I took a deep breath. I felt the cold floor under my sandals and remembered the early mornings in front of the sewing machine. No, I was not going to say no, but I was not going to say yes that easily either. "Sit up straight," I told them. "We are going to talk about bills, but also about memories." I took out a folder from the sideboard that I have kept for years. Documents, receipts, deeds. I put it on the table. Here is the history of everything I have done for this family. Every dollar, every sacrifice. I did not bring you here to applaud me, but to understand something. This house has an owner. She looked at me uncomfortable, as if she did not expect me to speak like that. "Mom, we do not mean to make you uncomfortable. We just want to get out of this jam." "It is not discomfort," I said. "It is clarity. Come back tomorrow, 8 in the morning." I am going to show you something more than papers." "Something else?" Mike asked, intrigued. "Yes. A decision I made last night," I replied. "And believe me, it is going to change how things are done in this house." They got up slowly. She pressed her lips together, uncomfortable. "So, will you help us?" "Tomorrow you will have your answer," I said, and I opened the door. When they left, silence returned to the living room, but it did not weigh the same anymore. I sat down, opened the folder, and ran my fingers over the pages. Every figure was a story. The notary receipt, the college payments, the wedding bills. My whole life put into numbers. That night, I slept little, but I slept differently. For the first time in days, I did not feel like a victim. I felt like the captain of my own storm. The altar candle consumed itself to the end, leaving a scent of wax that reminded me that flames go out but leave light. I got up before dawn. I put water to heat for coffee and fixed my hair, because the next day would not be just any day. It would be the day I taught them that respect also has a price. That night the house was so silent that I could hear my own pulse. I sat in the rocking chair in the living room with the folder of papers open on my lap. Outside, the wind moved the bougainvilleas, and the squeak of the gate sounded like an old sigh. The wall clock marked every minute as if it were pushing me to decide. Tick-tock, tick-tock. I put my hands on my shawl, squeezed tight, and let the memories arrive one by one. The day I signed the deed to this house. The smell of fresh ink. Mike's first school uniform still damp from scrubbing it so much. The early mornings of sewing with fingers swollen from pedaling the machine so much. My whole life was there in those pages, in those walls, in those calluses. I got up and went to the kitchen. I put water to boil. The smell of coffee filled the air. The steam fogged up the window panes, and there I saw myself reflected. My tired face, my swollen eyes, but my back straight. I was not broken. I was just wounded. And wounds heal when one decides to stop bleeding for those who do not deserve it. I poured the coffee and drank it slowly, feeling the heat go down my throat. I started talking to myself as if speaking to my late husband. "Did you see, old man?" I murmured. I thought I had raised a man who would defend me, and I raised someone who stays silent so as not to cause discomfort. The lump in my throat tightened, but I did not cry. Instead, I grabbed a notebook and started writing. I made a list. Everything I gave, everything I kept quiet about, everything that hurt. And at the end, I wrote something in large letters. Tomorrow, I changed the rules. I took a USB drive out of the drawer where I keep old recordings. There was something there that they did not know. A recording from when Mike's father and I bought the house, and the notary made it clear that the property remained in my name. I listened to it, and the sound of my young voice made me shudder. Martha Vance, owner. That resonated in my living room like a church bell. I went to the altar and lit a new candle. I knelt down. Virgin Mary. I whispered, "Give me courage. May my voice not tremble tomorrow. Make them respect me even if it hurts them." The flickering of the flame illuminated the folder of papers. I saw my name repeated in the deeds, as if destiny itself was telling me, "It is your moment." I closed the folder carefully and left it on the table ready for the next day. I walked through the house like someone inspecting their territory. The dining room I bought on installment plans, the new curtains, the living room full of family photos. I ran my fingers over the frames. What good were those smiles if I was not in the most important one of all? That question ignited me inside. It was no longer sadness. It was something sharper. Determination. I looked at myself again in the window glass. "Martha," I said to myself out loud, "tomorrow you are not the quiet grandmother. Tomorrow you are the owner of this house." I turned off the living room light but left the candle burning. I wanted to wake up and see it still alive, reminding me of my promise. I went to bed with my heart racing, but not from pain, but from strength. That night, I did not dream of the party, nor of the photos, nor of my daughter-in-law's laughter. I dreamed of my mother telling me, "Stand up straight, daughter. Respect is demanded standing up." When the rooster crowed at dawn, I was already awake. I dressed in my white button-down blouse, the one I always use for important meetings. I tied back my hair. I put on my pearl earrings. In front of the mirror, I smiled barely. "Today, I am not going to ask for a place," I said. "Today I am going to claim the one that is mine." The folder was waiting for me on the table. The candle was still lit, consumed halfway. The flame was small but firm, just like me. Because that morning, I was not going to be a begging grandmother. I was going to be the woman who would remind everyone who is in charge of this house. The dawn smelled of wet earth. It had rained in the early morning, as if the sky wanted to clean the air before what was to come. I got up before the neighborhood woke up. The neighbor's rooster crowed, the baker passed by on his bicycle, and I was already dressed in my white blouse, dark skirt, and polished shoes. It was not a coincidence. I dressed like someone preparing to go fight for her name. Before anything else, I took out my notebook and reviewed the list I wrote the night before. Every point was a reminder of why I had reached this moment. I underlined with red ink the words, "Respect Dignity Owner." I closed the notebook and left it next to the folder. Today, I was not going to improvise. Today, every word would be measured like a seamstress's stitch. I took a taxi downtown. The road was full of stalls starting to open. The smell of breakfast sandwiches, fresh coffee, boiled corn. It reminded me of all those times I traveled to the market to buy cheaper fabric, saving down to the last dollar. But this time, I was not coming to buy anything. I was coming to prepare my defense. I got off in front of the notary's office where years ago I had signed the deed to my house. The building smelled of old paper and ink. I greeted the receptionist, a young man who did not know me but smiled at me with respect. "I came to ask for a certified copy of this deed," I said, showing the file number. He nodded and asked me to wait. I sat in the waiting room looking at the walls full of diplomas. After a few minutes, I heard the sound of the printer and the metal stamp hitting the paper. That sound was music to my ears. I walked out of there with the document in hand, firmer than ever. Afterward, I walked to the office of a lawyer who had helped a friend with an inheritance problem. When he received me, I told him everything from my daughter-in-law's audio to the money they were coming to ask me for. "Mrs. Martha," he told me calmly, "you are within your rights. If they live in your house, they must respect the conditions you set." I felt something inside me straighten up. I was not alone. I kept the certified copy in the folder along with the receipts and bills. Before leaving downtown, I entered a church. The scent of incense enveloped me. I knelt in front of the altar of the Virgin Mary. "I do not ask you for revenge," I whispered. "I ask you for strength to speak without trembling. I ask that my words reach their hearts." I lit a candle and left it burning. The flame was tall, alive, like my determination. I returned home in the mid-afternoon. The neighborhood was quiet. The bougainvilleas shone with the sun. I put everything in order. The folder on the table, 2 clean cups, coffee ready to serve. I wanted the moment to be solemn. I wanted them to feel that they were not coming to just any chat, but to an act of justice. That night, I did not invite anyone. I did not speak to anyone. I closed the curtains, poured myself a chamomile tea, and rehearsed out loud what I was going to tell them. I walked through the living room as if it were a stage. Where would I sit? Where would I put the folder? When would I show the papers? Each detail was calculated. It was not revenge, it was order. It was teaching my son and his wife that kindness is not weakness, that the house they live in is not a free hotel, that my silence has an end. Before sleeping, I put the folder under my arm like someone hugging a shield. I went to the altar and blew out the candle from the night before. "Tomorrow will be another day," I said in a low voice, "and tomorrow I am not going to ask for permission. I am going to set conditions." I turned off the light. I lay down and took a deep breath. For the first time in days, I slept peacefully. My plan was ready. The clock struck midnight and sounded like an omen. The time for silence was over. The next morning, the house was silent, but not in sadness. It was an expectant silence like that of the church before Mass starts. I got up early, opened the windows to let the fresh air in, and brewed a pot of coffee. I placed the folder in the center of the table, well aligned, and sat down to wait. Every minute that passed, the tick-tock of the clock sounded like war drums. At 8 o'clock sharp, I heard the gate. I opened it, and there they were. Mike with a face of not having slept, and her elegant with a tight dress, and her cell phone in her hand, as if she already wanted to run out afterwards. "Come on in," I said with a firm voice. It was not an invitation, it was an order. They sat on the couch. I served coffee in silence. The house smelled of cinnamon, but also of something new determination. I sat in front of them, straight hands on the table. "Well," I started. "Yesterday you came to ask me for $15,000. Before talking about money, we are going to talk about respect." She smiled uncomfortably. "Mom, we really do not want problems. We just need your support to close the pending balance." I opened the folder and turned the first page, the deed to the house with my name in large letters. "Look," I said, "this is the deed to this house property of Martha Grace Vance. Here where you live, where you hold your gatherings, where you raised my granddaughter. This house has an owner, and it is me." Mike went pale. "Yes, Mom, we know, but nothing." I interrupted him. "I allowed you to live here without charging you rent because I thought it was my duty as a mother to help my son. I gave you a roof food support for the wedding, for college, for your decoration whims." I tapped the folder gently. "Everything is here. But yesterday I confirmed something. You believe that I am part of the family only when it comes to paying, not when it comes to celebrating." She let out a sigh, annoyed. "Mom, we already talked about that. It was not personal. It was logistics." "Logistics is moving tables, not moving grandmothers out of the family," I replied. "You humiliated me, and now you come knocking on my door as if nothing had happened." Mike looked up. "Mom, forgive us. It was not my intention to hurt you." "I know," I said, "because you did not even think about me, and that hurts more." I leaned forward, holding both of their gazes. "Yesterday, I decided that I am no longer going to be the woman who sews her lips shut to keep the peace. So here are my conditions. 1. I want a public apology in front of my granddaughter and whoever made the guest list. 2. I want to be included in all family decisions that involve this house. 3. And if you want me to help you with the money, you are going to sign a loan contract and start contributing to the house expenses." She opened her eyes, offended. "You want us to pay rent. I want you to learn the value of what you have." I held up the folder. "Because if you do not comply, I give you 30 days to find somewhere to live." Mike stayed silent. She swallowed hard and left the cell phone on the table. "Are you kicking us out?" "I am teaching you that generosity is not an obligation, that respect is the first rent that is paid." A heavy silence fell. The clock struck 8:30, as if confirming the end of the hearing. Mike looked at me with tears in his eyes. "Mom, we are going to do what you ask." She huffed, but seeing the firmness in my face, she lowered her gaze. "It is fine," she said. "We will apologize to you and host a dinner in your honor." I took a deep breath. I felt my chest light for the first time in weeks. "Then tomorrow we start over," I said, "but this time under my rules." I walked them to the door. When they left, I stayed in the living room looking at the folder. There were no screams, there were no insults, just truth spoken head on. For the first time in a long time, I felt like the owner of my story. And the most important part was still missing, that the whole family knew that this grandmother is not staying silent anymore. On Friday night, the house filled with smells that I had not felt here for a long time. Pot roast freshly made bread, fresh flowers in the dining room. I had bought the bougainvilleas myself and placed them in a large vase right in the center of the table. I wanted everything to smell like a new beginning, but also for them to remember that this space had a soul and that I was its guardian. At 7, Mike arrived with his wife and my granddaughter. She came looking serious without exaggerated makeup in a simple dress. I looked at her and felt something in my chest soften. She is still my little girl, I thought. Grandma, she said in a tiny voice. I am very sorry you were not at my sweet 16. It was not fair. I hugged her tight, breathing in her teenage perfume and holding back tears. It was not your fault, my love, I whispered in her ear, but I am glad you are here to hear it. We sat at the table. She, my daughter-in-law, took a deep breath and spoke. Her voice sounded contained, as if every word cost her a little. Mrs. Martha, I want to ask for your forgiveness. I was wrong. I should not have excluded you from the party. It was a selfish decision, and it let me see things I do not like about myself. Silence. Only the crackling of the candle on the table. I nodded slowly. Thank you for saying it. I accept your apology. Then I looked at Mike. And you, son. He lowered his head. Mom, I failed you. I should not have kept quiet. I promise that from today on you will be heard. The air became lighter. I served the roast beef on the plates as if that gesture was a seal of peace. While we ate, my granddaughter took out her cell phone and showed me a video, the waltz from the party. I want you to watch it with me, she told me. I watched it, and although the lump in my throat returned this time, it did not hurt as much. It was as if by sharing it with me, the wound began to close. At the end of dinner, I took out an envelope. Inside was the loan contract the lawyer had prepared. I placed it in front of them. Here is the money you asked for, I said, but now it is in writing, and every month we are going to review the house accounts together. It is not a punishment. It is so you learn to value things. She signed it without arguing. Mike looked at me with a mixture of respect and relief. Thanks, Mom, he said. Today I understand that it is not about the money. It is about you. The dinner ended with shy laughter, as if we were all learning to live together again. Before leaving, my granddaughter hugged me again. Next year, we will have a 17th birthday party, she whispered to me, but it will be in this house and you will be at the main table. I closed the door behind them and stood for a moment in silence. I looked at the flowers on the table, the clean tablecloth, the candles consuming themselves slowly. I took a deep breath. It was not revenge, it was justice. I approached the altar and lit one last candle. Thank you, Virgin Mary, I murmured. Today they learned that respect is sown at home and harvested at the table. The flame illuminated my face in the dining room mirror. I saw myself serene, firm at peace, and thought, may this story serve whoever listens to it. May no woman believe that her voice does not matter. The following Sunday dawned with a different silence. It was not emptiness, it was peace. I opened the windows and let the fresh air fill the house, the smell of damp earth mixed with the aroma of my fresh coffee. I sat at the table where the flowers from the night before still remained. Some were already withered, but they were still beautiful. That is life, I thought. Some things dry up but leave beauty in the memory. The house felt alive again. I walked to the living room and looked at the family photos on the wall. That night we had taken a new photo. Everyone together, me, in the center, my granddaughter, hugging me. I hung it where everyone could see it upon entering. That image was worth more than any check. I got ready calmly. I put on my embroidered blouse and my pearl earrings. I looked at myself in the mirror and smiled, not with vanity, but with satisfaction. You did it, Martha, I told myself. You recovered your place without losing your essence. Mid-morning, a message arrived from Mike. Mom, today we are going to have a barbecue in the yard. "Are you coming?" I smiled. I no longer had to ask them to include me. Now they were looking for me. I replied with a simple, "Sure, I will be there." Before leaving, I lit a candle on the altar. "Thank you for giving me courage," I whispered. "Today, this house not only has walls, it has respect." I closed the door and felt that I was not just going out to any Sunday, I was going out to a new chapter of my life, one where my voice is not kept away, where my dignity is not negotiated, where my family sees me as what I am, the root that sustains it. If you have also felt that you were left out of your own story, remember this. It is never too late to recover your place. It does not matter if you are a mother, grandmother, or daughter. Your voice has value and your presence matters. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to impose respect in your own family? From what city are you watching us? Hit like and subscribe to keep sharing life stories that teach us to hold our heads high and live with dignity.